everyone. Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. I'm your host, Brooke Mitchell, and today's webinar is 40 Years of Adventure. Founder Ben Bressler on Nat Hab's Past, Present, and Future, presented by Nat Hab founder Ben Bressler and Chief Sustainability Officer Court Whelan. Thank you so much for being here today, Ben and Court. Over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Brooke, and thanks, Ben, for joining, obviously, and thanks everyone in the audience for joining as well. So I've got a long list of questions here that I hope will give you a glimpse into the mind and the history of Ben and Nat Hab and all sorts of things with conservation travel and natural habitat adventures. So we're just going to kick things off, and I have to say, of course, first, kudos, Ben. 40 years, wow, that's a quite a milestone. A couple of years ago, I made it to 40 years myself in life, and it feels like a lifetime, 40 years. So major kudos on running an extraordinary company for that long. I'm going to kind of use that marker of 40 years. Did the Ben 40 years ago have any idea of what this would become, of what natural habitat would become, and what did you think it would become?
Well, first, welcome everybody. Thanks for starting off with a tough one, Court. 40 years ago, I was 8 years old, so starting the company at a very young age. I'm only kidding you folks on that. I was 22 years old. And what did I think at 22, and what did I think this thing would become? I want to be honest with you. I started this company because I wanted to be outside. I wanted to try to figure out a way to make a living and be outdoors. I had tried 1 year out of college. I was a teacher, a history teacher at a boarding school in New Hampshire. And according to the headmaster, I was the world's worst teacher. And I was fired by the time November came around. They did let me finish out the year, which was great. But it became a couple things became clear to me. Number one is that teaching is the hardest profession in the world, and I have so much respect for educators. And number two, I was probably not meant to work for somebody else. And I guess the third thing was when I found something that I wanted to do, I wanted to be outside. So what would I tell myself is that if you think you're starting a business and you're going to get to be outside, think again, because I have spent a good portion of these 40 years behind a computer. Of course, I've gotten to travel a lot, but I'm not outside all day. And I would probably tell myself is get ready, because this is going to be it's a long, long process building a business.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So did you truly have any remote idea of the size and the scope and really the influence that this now conservation travel company would have early on in that journey? Or was there maybe a moment or an era in those early days or middle days that you had that light bulb moment that was like, whoa, this could become something, and this is making change across the world? Did that ever kind of pop up and occur at any point?
Well, it's a great question. I had an apartment with some other guys in Boston, and our coffee table with two milk crates, right? And I used to keep mountain travel, Sobek catalogs, Society Expedition catalogs, Wilderness Travel, other companies' catalogs on these milk crates. And we were nowhere near the size or didn't have the reach of these companies at all. And I would dream of that. Did I think we could actually get there? I wasn't sure. I didn't. You just kept your nose to the grindstone and just kept going. Did you actually think you could get there? I really don't think I did. But I will say that I dreamed of these trips. I leafed through those catalogs and ran to the mailbox to get the new ones. They're all fantastic experiences. So I lived by those catalogs of other companies, and those seem to me to be my inspiration.
Excellent, excellent. So, getting back to the idea of being outside and on the trips, I'm going to ask you one of the most difficult questions for a travel industry professional, which I get asked often, which is what is your favorite trip? And I realize how challenging that is. We both travel a lot. We have traveled a lot. We continue to travel a lot. But everybody wants to know, Ben, what, or at least you can, a top three, a top whatever. But
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
to us about your favorite trips and experiences out there with Nat Hab.
Yeah, like you, Court. I mean, it is the hardest question. You get it every time you meet somebody. You get that question. It's very, very hard. And usually, you're just home from a trip, so you can just say, "Well, I was just in," because you know it was great because you were just there. Um, I can look at it as which trips do I repeat? Which do I go on all the time? Well, I've been up to see the polar bears, 30 seasons. So that sure is a lot. Of course, I used to work carrying baggage there and helping people in and out of rovers and whatnot. But I've gone to Baja so many times because I just love being out with the gray whales. And one of the trips that I think is amongst the most meaningful for me is the mountain gorillas of Uganda and Rwanda. I first went there in 1990 on my honeymoon. And Laura and I were 27 years old, and we got to go see the mountain gorillas, and that was just absolutely, oh God, mind exploding to spend an hour with these gorillas at that age. And I've returned many times, took my 17-year-old son there. I went back for my 60th birthday with my brother and some friends 2 years ago. I will say that any trip where we have an impact is also really meaningful to me. When I get there, and I was going through the forest out by the chimpanzees in Uganda and Kabale, and I come through the woods, and there's a sign with a Nat Hab, there's a school with a Nat Hab sign on it because we helped build that school. And I didn't really remember that we did that a few years earlier. That just inspires the hell out of me to see that we're having a positive impact. So there's a lot of reasons why different trips are important, whether it's 30-second moments of mindfulness with wildlife, or you meet the people that you've been able to impact. I know I didn't give you an answer there because there's too many.
It's more than an answer than I might have expected, because I know how hard that question is. And to your point right off the bat, uh, one of my initial answers to that question is, of course, wherever I just was, because it's most fresh in your mind, and it's very memorable, of course, because you just got back from it. But I hear you. I don't think I've ever answered that with just one trip. I usually launch into, well, how much time you have? I got my top five,
Right.
and then it turns into a top 10. But yeah, I suspected that gorillas was going to be amongst your tippy top, because I know you've been there multiple times and have taken multiple family members on different expeditions down there. And having been down there myself and even guided down there, it is one of the most extraordinary experiences in your life, to look eyes to eyes with baby gorillas tumbling down the mountainside, to watch the relationship of a silverback with their young, just incredible. So yeah, I'll second that. Certainly in the top list of my experiences as well. Um, okay, so kind of getting back to some of the business aspects and the origin story of Nat Hab, since this is the 40-year anniversary webinar after all. I've of course heard many stories of the struggles of starting businesses, not just in the travel industry, but just businesses in general. Was there a moment that you knew Nat Hab was going to make it? Like, obviously, I'm sure there were struggles, and there's times of questioning, and it's always so easy to look backward in hindsight and be like, oh yeah, we were definitely going to make it through that. But any points where you knew that you had grown big enough or made a big enough impact, or any really big green light in your history of Nat Hab where it's like, okay, we're on to something?
Yeah, well, I think there's different levels of we're onto something and we're going to make it. Maybe when we talk about onto something, I can tell you a story of a light bulb moment in our first baby harp seal trip when I'm flying out. Finally, my turn to get in a helicopter and go out and see these baby harp seals in 1988, and I'm in the back of a helicopter with these two septuagenarian sisters, and they were, so excited to get out there. And I'm looking at these ice floes, and as far as you can see is ice floes and mother and baby harp seals. And I'm walking around, and it's pretty amazing. But then I get back into the helicopter with them, and I go to high five them in our mittens, and I see that they've got tears in their eyes. And as much as it inspired me to be out on the ice floes, the feeling I got that I was able to facilitate this for these two people, that it was so important to them. They had donated $100 a year to protect these seals, and these adorable white seals were so important to them, and I was able to help them get out there. To me, that's the moment I knew that there was something to this, that this is what I wanted to do. Of course, being out there was important to me, but helping them be out there was really what I wanted to do. So that was the moment that I really knew that this was it. Now, what was a moment that I knew we were going to make it? That's a tough one, because I mean, if you're in the service industry, the best quality you can have is insecurity. Being insecure is a great thing, because all you want to do is make it better and better and better, because you have this fear that someday your high school math teacher is going to go on one of the trips, and they're going to come back and not have a great time and say, "See, Bressler, I told you you're never going to amount to anything." So it's a great thing to be a little bit insecure on it. So, and you always have to keep an eye out, because it's a very volatile industry. I mean, think about what goes wrong. Think about how big our product is around the world. You've got so many variables. You've got drivers in Indonesia. You've got guides in Zimbabwe. You've got airplanes in China. I mean, just so many things can go wrong. So keeping humble about that, knowing that this thing's a beast. It's not a bad thing to be a little worried all the time. And when do I know we're going to make it? Probably this morning would be about when I would say
I was gonna
we're going
say,
to make it.
yeah, yeah. Has it ever? Right, right. That's a great response. So yeah, you touched on that, and that was actually going to be my next question. Is about the flip side, sort of the challenges, and I of course know, just as much as anybody, the things that you have just mentioned with all the logistics, with the baggage, with guides, with hotels. There's all these confirmations and everything. Um, there's a long set of challenges and a long set of, well, a large Swiss watch of moving gears and pieces. But of course, all business have their specific set of challenges. But I'm wondering if you can say anything more, or want to expand on that, of what are some of the more challenging issues with running an ecotourism or conservation travel company, or really just a travel company in general. It doesn't have to be necessarily conservation specific, but what's inherent in this business that maybe some other people might not realize are actually the biggest challenges?
Yeah, it's fun. It's a great question, because I think the challenges are more internal. What happens is we love travel. We want to go everywhere. I know you, Court. You love it even more than I do. We want to go everywhere. We want to experience everything. Yet, if you get into something and you're not an expert, you're going to mess it up. That's the way that goes, because there's too many variables out there. And so I'll give you an example. When we arrived in Boulder, Colorado from New Jersey, we'd been in business 10 years, and we had 12 trips. Over the next 4 years, after we got to Boulder, we ended up with 119 trips. We expanded so rapidly that we were getting into things we weren't experts at. We were doing 2 trips a year with 6 people each to Papua New Guinea, yet we didn't know enough about Papua New Guinea. So we added things that we weren't experts at, and all the quality dropped. Our lives, we were showing up at the office at 5:30 in the morning, staying till 8 at night, answering questions that we didn't know the answers to. So what really happens in our industry, the challenge is expertise. And you can't do you can't add trips and be in places unless you're really an expert, because Murphy's Law reigns out there. Whatever can go wrong will, and a lot can go wrong. So you've got to grow slowly. I mean, think now, flip forward. That was 94 to 98. In 98, we had 119 trips. And one day we sat there and we're cutting 100 of them. We actually spent in one day, we cut 99 trips. We didn't quite get to the 100, we cut 99.
You actually cut them, you like retracted.
We contracted
Yeah.
from 119 down to 20 trips. We spent a full day in a condo here in Boulder, bickering, arguing over which trips. It was the whole management team, which trips we're going to keep and get rid of. And we all had our favorites, and we were not going to leave until we got down to 19 or 20 trips, and we did it. But now think about, that was 1998. Here it is 2025, and we only really have about 80 trips now. So we didn't even grow back to that 119 because much more methodical. We take 2 or 3 years to develop product, and we really want these experiences to be right, not only for the guest, but for our own sanity. If we're adding too many trips, we're just going to lose our minds. And then you have the local people too. You want to be able to work with the right local people. You want to leave the money in the right hands, and that takes time. I forgot what the question was, and I started off on something or other, but I'll just stick with what I said.
You answered it brilliantly. No, that was great. It was all about the challenges. I have a just personal curiosity, and if you don't know, there's no worries. But of the 20 trips, how many of those do you think we still have in our portfolio, so to speak, today? Do you think were those like the real core ones?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, there were the
fantastic.
12 that we moved to Boulder with,
Yeah,
Alaska, Galapagos, well, baby
yeah.
harp seals, polar bears, Alaska, Galapagos, Kenya. Um, we had a Borneo back then, which I know you've guided a lot. We had the only one that I can think of that we have that we no longer do is the Shetland Islands.
Hmm.
And there was a weird reason we have the Shetland Islands, and it's a fantastic, interesting place. It's just there hasn't been the interest in our guests to bring enough volume there. But the Shetland Islands, I happened to have a wedding in London one weekend and of a friend of mine, and then the next weekend in Dublin. And I'm like, I had a week in between, and it's 2 in the morning, and I'm in my condo in New Jersey, and I'm watching Nova, which is it's like National Geographic videos, and I see a video about polar skua or Arctic skuas attacking penguins. I'm sorry, attacking puffins on the cliffs of the Shetlands. And I'm like, oh man, I want to go there. So I had the week between the weddings. So, we took a train up to the Shetland Islands, went and saw that. I'm like, man, we got to add this. This is unbelievable. Watching this aerial attack on the cliffs of the Shetland Islands at midnight in between these two weddings I had. So we added it, and it was a great, great trip. We didn't sell a lot of it. One of our salespeople married one of our guides, so we still have some presence up there. I haven't talked to her. But anyway, that's the only trip I can think of way back from '98 that we no longer have, although I'd love to add it back.
That's cool. No, I suspected as much. When you think of the 20 core trips or so, yeah, I bet you they've really stood the test of time. Some of the really, iconic nature places of the planet, right? The Amazon, Galapagos, polar bears,
Mhm.
wolves, things like that. Now I can absolutely understand. Um, okay, so I want to talk about our mission statement for a moment. So Nat Hab's mission is conservation through exploration, protecting our planet by inspiring travelers, supporting local communities, and boldly influencing the entire travel industry. I love that. I really do. As a former academic, that it just falls right in line with the idea of ecotourism and conservation travel. But I'm just wondering, what can you say about the mission statement? What does it mean to you?
Well, I will tell you the mission statement is more internal than external. We have it big on the wall here, as you well know, on a giant mural of a polar bear and cubs. And conservation through exploration, to me, is a beacon. It's sort of a light that we have to follow internally. I don't know if many of our guests even know that that's our mission statement. I know it's online, but it's something that we have to keep internally. It just keeps us honest every time we're about to do something. It's got to really fall in line with that. And you think it's got the word communities in there, which is so important because conservation isn't just about getting people to these places so they can fall in love with it and go home and be more sustainable and to think about how we protect our planet. It's also about the local people. And so I think the words were really carefully chosen by over a good couple of weeks as we really put together our thoughts on it. So to me, it's something that we keep out in front of us internally that we have to think about all the time. And it's couldn't be bigger on that wall here right in the office.
Mhm. Ben, what are the key ingredients that are part of Nat Hab that you think make it really uniquely positioned as a leader in the travel space?
Um, that's a good question about leader. Um, so obviously conservation through exploration, sustainability, environmentalism in total. We're not the only company doing that, and it's fantastic. I mean, we go out there and we push it. But there are other great companies out doing great stuff, and I love that. One of the things that is important to us and that I think helps us continue to improve is our core ideologies, these things that we always have to think about. And one of that is to raise the bar on sustainability. We can't just be sustainable. We can't just, don't use disposable bottles. We have to do better and better. And in 2007, we became the world's first 100% carbon neutral travel company. That's great. But what do we do next year? We built the hybrid Safari One, the first hybrid Safari truck. That's great. But what do we do the next year? So we have to keep improving. And I love that other companies are doing the same. And again, I need to say that those companies inspire me, and I hope that we can inspire them, and that all of us together can inspire our guests, and our guests can inspire local people. And so it takes a lot of companies doing a lot of great stuff to have travel have a positive impact on the planet.
Mm-hmm. Well, as a quick aside, we got a internal communication today on sort of the official announcement of our Peru electric vehicle, which was something that we've been working on for years now. It's come together, and just speaking about the carbon neutrality and this idea of decarbonizing the travel industry, we now have another electric vehicle online, which is very, very exciting in Peru. So fantastic news there. So we're going to take a quick commercial break. No, I'm kidding. Not a commercial break. We're going to do a slideshow break. We're going to do a little show and tell segment. We've dug up some old photos of Nat Hab's past and Ben's past, and we're just going to kind of get a little word from Ben on these 5 photos we're going to cycle through here. And Brooke, I'll let you take it away on that. And Ben, feel free.
Okay, is that one showing there? Okay, great. Well, geez. Oh man, I'm 12 years old. I don't know where that frown is coming from, but I got my wanderlust from my parents. This is funny because it's a picture of me, my dad, obviously, at the Grand Canyon when I was 12 years old. But my mother was really the inspiration behind my love of travel. My mother, left New York, Brooklyn, to go to college at age 17, but she was always reading travel books. That's what she did. We would always find her in the back room, probably hiding from me and my brother because we were mayhem. But she was always reading travel books, Europe on $5 a day, and whatever it was. She was just planning trips, and her dream was to travel. So she would take us first to road trips in our Vista Cruiser station wagon. Where my brother and I would beat each other in the back, and we would go into all the museums and all the stuff she wanted to, and my brother and I would steal away to go play in the woods, and my poor father would have to go and do the museums and the Civil War reenactments and all of that stuff. But we loved those trips as kids. So that picture there is just a great, to me, it's really a great memory of my dad with his mustache and those big sideburns. He was a hippie, by the way, that big civil libertarian hippie.
Classic.
Seal watch. This is our baby harp seal trips. I think we've got the helicopters in the background. That's our crew of pilots and staff. This was when we adopted the name Natural Habitat Adventures that first year. I think there's actually, for a hot minute, we had the word wildlife in there. It was still work with some of the people who are in that group right there, or we're certainly still friends with some of them. One of the women in there, our first full-time employee, her daughter now works for the company. So that really has, and my mom, of course, that's a story right there. My mother was an attorney. And of course, I'm discombobulated trying to run this company. And she was the corporation counsel for the city of Newark in New Jersey. And she left there. She had some health issues, and she left there to come help me run the company. And I just want to say, I can assure you, we would not have survived if my mom didn't come help me. And I don't know how many entrepreneurs out there can safely say that their mother saved them, but Mom, thanks. Oh, again, the baby harp. So this is before we knew you weren't supposed to hug the animals, but this was the first time out there with the baby harp seals. And I'm telling you, I look so young. I feel like that was like my bar mitzvah picture or something like that. So that was in flying out of the Ile de la Madeleine in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, these small islands, and we would fly by helicopters out to see the baby harp seals. So that was probably 1989, probably our second year out there. Ah, the mountain gorillas, and that's my honeymoon. And Laura and I are out there with, oh, look, I think I'm wearing the same hat. I think I only had one hat. I've only had money for one hat. But yeah, that's actually in Nyungwe Forest in Rwanda, where we're tracking colobus monkeys on the way up towards the mountain gorillas. Very, very happy time, of course, in our lives. Interestingly, Rwanda at that time was and it was uneasy, and it was pre-genocide. There was a smaller genocide just within months of our visit. And we could feel it. We could feel that there was some uneasiness, some tension in the country. Incredibly, Rwanda now is really become, one of the safest, one of the, success stories. There are, of course, there's another side to that coin. I think that some people will point to, but Rwanda's become an incredible country that has really embraced the protection of the gorillas and its lands for tourism, and of course leaving money with local communities. Oh, early polar bear watching. That is Don and Marilyn's early vehicles out there. We of course have much more sophisticated rovers out there now. I know you've guided out there many times, Court. But it's interesting to see, how these things, how things improve, and it's funny. We have that core ideology of always improve, and you have to be careful with it because you want things to get better, more comfortable, safer. You don't necessarily always want them to get more opulent for opulence sake, but comfort for sure, ease for sure. So there's a double-edged sword to that. Sometimes when you take improvement towards safari camps, for example, you might let the opulence override the experience. And we haven't done that in Churchill. The vehicles, of course, have gotten better and better and more comfortable. But it is all about enhancing the experience. The back platforms have gotten wider. Don has put this steel mesh flooring in there so you can see bears from underneath. So improvement can actually enhance the wildlife experience, not only be about, opulence or comforts.
Yeah, that's such a great photo. I'm sure that there are a number of people in the audience that have been with us on a polar bear trip and are just remarking how far we have indeed come.
Yeah.
But it's amazing story of progress and evolution over the years, right? But these were the early days. This is the origin story, and fortunately, the bears are still there. Maybe not those two, but yeah, still such an amazing trip.
Well,
Well,
what I want to say about that is what is the difference of the way local people think about polar bears now versus then. It makes so much sense, I mean, bears would wander through town, as you well know, and they, of course, the people loved polar bears, but they were dangerous. And now there's just such a different way of thinking about these bears as a sustainable natural resource. And so many people have seen these bears of Churchill have gone home. You can't go home after seeing polar bears lumber across the tundra and say, yeah, no, they're not important. We don't need to protect them. No, they go home inspired. And so to be a part of this, to me, and we didn't invent polar bear viewing up there at all. That existed. I like to think we helped build it and helped the community as well as they helped us. But it's been important. I think polar bear watching has been important to the understanding of climate change, to the understanding of the plight of polar bears.
Yeah. And your point about, the community and the change of mentality. I mean, there are books written on this that are now published and in libraries and even in gift stores in Churchill of how truly the town's mentality has changed. In some ways, the Arctic's mentality has changed, understanding the really increased value of wildlife when you wrap kind of a tourism angle around it. Because, of course, they are threatening animals. They could be seen as threats to life and property. They do have, unfortunately, value if hunted or anything like that. But the reality is, and we've seen this time and time again with papers and studies, is that wildlife, this goes for everything around the world, including elephants and tigers and jaguars, worth anywhere from 5 to 5,000 times more in the local economy when left alive and in pristine condition and part of a viewing operation. So it's a great way. It's been my life's work to add value to natural areas and to wildlife. So yeah, excellent point, of course, there. So I think Brooke, that's probably the last photo we had. So we can go back to some questions here. So I'm gonna kind of talk about some of Nat Hab's accomplishments, or at least ask about them. What would you say are some of Nat Hab's or your biggest accomplishments or proudest moments in the last 40 years?
It's funny, they're small moments to me. I'm not a very mindful person, unfortunately. I think that is probably consistent with many entrepreneurs because you spend so much time every waking moment thinking about your business. How do I grow it? How do I ensure its safety? How do we do better? How do we take care of my high school math teacher that may otherwise have a bad time and call me up? By the way, my high school math teacher, if you're watching, Mr. Ongaro, you were wonderful. It was me. It was all me. The important moments to me, or important times, are based on 15 seconds here or there, where I walk through the office and I see the brilliance of the people I get to work with. That to me, that's amongst the prouder moments that I have is. I just get so proud that I'm able to give an opportunity to these folks, and they make all this great stuff happen. To me, my job is to provide opportunity, and so I get very proud when I walk around and see you folks, including you, Court, and Brooke, and so many others. But also when you show up on a trip and you see somebody wearing your logo, and and they bring each other home. They show you that because of the work we're doing, we get to help support a village or a family or a village. It could be, I was at one of our guides' homes in Peru last year, and he showed me his musical instruments. And we had lunch with his family. That is such a proud moment for me to meet these people where they're from. And then, of course, I get embarrassed meeting guests sometimes, but to hear their experiences. Those are just individually talk to them on the phone or meet them out there, and they tell me an important moment that they had in nature, whether it's snorkeling with a sea lion or whether it's just coming face to face or pretty close to that with a polar bear or sitting with a mountain gorilla. And to know, again, that I had some hand in facilitating that. Those are the moments that make all of it worthwhile.
No, it's beautiful. You think you're going to hear Ben say it's been, this award or this appearance in some major TV show, and it's the summation of the small but mighty and meaningful moments. I love that.
Yeah.
Where do you feel Nat Hab has been the most innovative over the years?
Well, that's a great question. So it's important to be innovative in your products. And I use the word product a little reluctantly because I don't really love to think of them as products, but because they're in many ways art. You have to put these itineraries together, or I should say, we get to put these itineraries together. But it is our product. The planet is our product. And if you think of it that way, we need to protect our product, which is protect the planet, right? So I think being innovative in different ways of getting out there is important for guests to have different ways to view the northern lights, or to see polar bears, or to be in a boat that gets you farther afield, or to have a camp that we didn't build, but we're able to help facilitate out in Lake Clark to see grizzlies, or it's important to be innovative about that. I have to say, though, the most important thing is to remember to focus, because I didn't always do that, through the years. As I mentioned, I took us away from what we were best at. I took us away from what even our mission was, because I loved it all, and because I thought it was innovative to do more. More isn't more innovative. More is just more, and it's not necessarily better. Better is expertise, being expert. So I would say, the word innovative is important, but I would say more important is focus and expertise.
Yeah. So this next question is kind of about the evolution of Nat Hab, and looking at that old polar rover, I could say that's one type of evolution from an older polar rover to a much new, sleeker, well-designed one. But yeah, other than the size of the company, but feel free to chime in on that as well. But I was kind of thinking, other than the size of the company, how has Nat Hab evolved over time? And I guess what I'm sort of getting at is I've heard you talk about growth and the benefits of growth, and I won't put words in your mouth, but kind of getting into that idea of evolution over time with, just kind of bait you on it with the sort of importance of this influence we've heard about before.
Yeah, I mean, you use the word influence there, and you use it all the time when I hear you talking to groups. It's about the influence, right? I mean, we want to influence guests by showing them the beauty of these places, and we know what will happen after that, right? They will go home and go, holy cow, look at this. We have to protect it. We want to influence local people by saying, look, here's your opportunity. Here's an opportunity to help yourself, your family, your communities, and help protect wildlife. So to do that, you need to have some reach, though. You have to have some breadth of product. You have to have a number of guests. You can't have 15 guests a year show up somewhere and expect that that's going to have a positive impact on the locals. As a matter of fact, that could have a negative impact if you're not really doing it well. Having enough expertise to have enough people going, of course, in small groups and such. So when I talk about the growth of the company, the more we can grow, the more people we can touch positively, both on the ground and guests. But also, and this is a big one, is what other companies can we help influence? Again, it's not just us. There are other companies thinking the way we're thinking in terms of conservation, but there are big bus tour companies. There are a lot of travel companies out there, and our goal is conservation through exploration. In that is to change the way people think about travel, from larger consumptive tours to more meaningful, small group, sustainable exploration of discovery. So if we can help other companies see that this is a valid business. Now, may seem weird that I want more competitors out there, but I do. We want these companies to start to adopt what we and some other companies are doing. And I say, God bless them. I'll help them do that. I know you do that, Court. Court, you go out and you help these companies become carbon neutral. You do the calculations for them. And we want to help that. That's an obligation of ours. A rising tide lifts all boats. But to do that, we have to grow. We have to continue to touch more people in a positive way.
Yeah, and I love that. So yeah, we have helped a couple dozen travel companies go carbon neutral over the years, and I think on one hand you might think, well, doesn't that just kind of bring them up to the bar that you're currently at? But I love the idea that actually helps even further push us to raise the bar, because while we've become fluent in that language of sustainability or what have you, it could be anything within the running of trips or the quality we have or the training of our expedition leaders. As we help bring the whole travel company up to that level, because we are in support of ecotourism and conservation travel, that just kind of gets us to level up even further and say, okay, we've been there, we're teaching it, let's get to the next level and the next level and the next level. So yeah, I love that philosophy and that mentality.
Well, of course, as you well know, I mean, there are other companies doing this as well. It's not just us, but there's then we have to get to that next level that you've spearheaded, which is our science-based targets. Being carbon neutral is nice, but that's not the answer. That's just a stepping stone. So I just feel like this idea that everybody pushing each other and helping and encouraging each other, all the companies, is the way we're going to continue to go in the right direction.
A rising tide lifts all boats. You said it. So Brooke, we're getting close to the end of the questions here. I have one final question for Ben. I know we've got some time for questions from the audience as well, and I imagine we have a number of great questions coming through. So I'm going to sort of end with my question for you, Ben, on the future of Nat Hab. Where do you see, and this is very open-ended, but where do you see Nat Hab 5 years from now?
Well, I mean, it's the same thing that I will always say is I want us to continue to be Nat Hab, but Nat Hab on steroids. But I said that 5 years ago, and 5 years before that, and 5 years before that. So what does it mean? But you can't grow at such a rate that you lose what you're doing. And that's why you have your mission statement so big on the wall. That's why it's so important to keep your culture. And culture's an interesting thing. I don't mean the culture of when we were in our 20s and we were a little crazy, right? I mean, that of course was fun. But I mean the culture of keeping front and center of our mission, how we get there, you just get more and more professional. Use technology more and more as an accelerator, not to replace people, but to help us get further to our goal. So that's it's just continue to be better at being ourselves.
Beautiful words to end on. Well, Brooke, I will turn it over to you for some questions at this point.
Wow, Court and Ben, thank you both so much. This has been very entertaining and enlightening for me, knowing the company well, and I'm sure everybody listening has loved every moment too. We do have lots of great questions coming in, and I have noticed some themes popping up. But before I ask you the first question, Ben, I want to tell you that we have someone tuning in that went on the SEALs trip in 1990 as their first trip. So just wanted to tell
Welcome.
you that.
Well, nice to
How
see
cool.
you or to hear. Yeah,
Yes, and a lot of
thanks for joining.
multi times repeat travelers that love Nat Hab. So, all right. First question. How do you decide where to develop new trips? What is the process, and is there anything that stops Nat Hab from expanding to certain areas?
That's a great question. I mean, well, for one, we have to be careful in how fast we expand. So I talk about expertise. One surefire way to find ourselves in the position that we were between 94 and 98 is to grow wide instead of deep. So by adding too many trips at once can be problematic. So we have to be careful about it. And there's just some basic principles. Is it something that we can be great at? Is it a destination we can really do well? Then we'll do it. Is it a destination that really can drive our engine in terms of numbers? If we're going to bring 12 guests a year, that's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for us to add it because, first of all, if you're bringing 12 a year, you're not going to be great. We're going to have to reinvent it every season, and we won't have enough experience to continue to improve it. And then is it something we're passionate about? If we're really passionate about it, we can do a number of travelers that can really be meaningful for the local community and that we can influence by allowing them to see this or helping them see it. And we can be great at it. Then if they hit all those things together, we can add that destination. Being careful, of course, not to add too many at once.
Great.
Look out for Mongolia coming your way.
Oh, just dropped that bomb. Okay. Well, thanks for that. I would love to go to Mongolia. Okay, next here we have several questions asking how the relationship with the World Wildlife Fund came to be, and maybe how that has progressed over the years too.
Yeah, so back in the late 90s, there was a very big affinity travel market, and there still is, of course. Universities, zoos, museums, have travel programs. But in the late 90s until 2001, I think many more of them were into it. Come 2001, with 9/11, many of them said they might have 3 or 4 or 5 people working in their travel department, and they were packaging many trips a year, and they were maybe losing money on half of them. And we were doing the same thing. We were running 80 or I think our top was 80 or 90 departures a year for affinity groups. And it really wasn't sustainable because many of them we weren't very good at. It was part of those 100 trips we got rid of. And one of the groups was World Wildlife Fund. And come around 2001, 2, 3, World Wildlife Fund decided, well, let's not work with 25 different companies running 50 different trips a year. Let's work with 2 companies, one that did ship-based trips and one that did land-based trips. And they chose us for land-based trips, and they chose Lindblad Expeditions for ship-based trips. And the next year, Lindblad moved over to National Geographic as a full partner, which makes a lot of sense given the way they operate and the way National Geographic thinks in terms of travel. It makes a ton of sense. So about that point, we became sort of exclusive with World Wildlife Fund, or at least primarily. And it made sense because we think alike. It's a great, great partnership. This is not just a marketing partnership where WWF tells their many millions of members and donors about these sorts of trips. And it's that, but it's also about inspiring our field team with science from the WWF scientists. It's about, I can tell you when I'm wearing the panda, I feel great pride in what we're doing. It's a reminder to us internally that everything we do has a somewhat higher calling. We have responsibility to represent an organization that has done great things to help protect the planet. So it's evolved over time where we're really aligned in the goals. It's a partnership with alignment, which is the best kind.
I was going to
Yeah, and I
say,
know.
not to step on your toes, Ben, but kind of relating to the initial question of how do we develop new trips and all that. Some of it's kind of mildly science based when organizations like World Wildlife Fund or others actually discover something new, a phenomenon, an aggregation, a migration. A trip that comes to mind is like the jaguars of the Pantanal. Like 20 years ago, people did not realize you could be almost guaranteed to be seeing jaguars in the Pantanal. But as scientists and conservation biologists and then photographers and then other groups, it's something that the scientific world kind of brought it to us. So I think that's kind of an interesting dimension of that parallel world between academia and science and travel and conservation companies and groups like World Wildlife Fund.
Yeah, fantastic point, Court. And what an interesting phenomenon that is, the Pantanal and the jaguar is a great example. Speaking of partnerships, I'm also seeing a trend of people asking about the relationship with Lindblad. Could you go into that a little further, Ben?
Sure, I'm gonna tell you share the problems we experienced in the late 90s. When we exploded and we grew by these 100 and whatever trips over 4 years, we were bringing more travelers, but we were losing money. And when I talk about, and we didn't get this into it, but man, it's tough running a business, right? We want to do the right thing. We want to do cool stuff. We love getting out there, but we had so many products that we were losing money. And at that point in 98, I took on an investor to help us get through. We cut 100 trips or 99 trips that one day, and we took on an investor to help us get through. And recently, that investor sold their shares about 7 years ago to Lindblad Expeditions. Funny, they brought in these private equity folks who came in to meet with me, and they tried to be casual by taking their $3,000 suit jackets off and their ties off, and they bought some sneakers at Dick's Sporting Goods right down the road from us. So they showed up with sneakers to try and be casual. Meanwhile, we have dogs running around the office, and some people walking around barefoot, and it's an adventure travel company. There's a lot of mayhem going on. That's what we do, right? Private equity really wasn't the right direction because they mostly wanted to be in for a few years and then exit and make a profit. And So I called Sven, who I knew from the Adventure Collection, which is a consortium of adventure companies. And Sven said, yeah, great, I'm so into this. I flew out that next day and went and saw him, and they flew out a couple days later, and they came to see the inner workings of the company. And then they worked with our partners in buying their shares in the company. And so that's how we became partners with Lindblad. And it's really wonderful. I mean, Lindblad is they've been great partners because they know what we do, they respect what we do, they allow us to do it. They help us when they can. We help them where we can. So it feels to me, and Sven is one of the great environmentalists, a real inspiration to me. So I feel like we are very aligned.
Yeah, that's awesome. Talk about a perfect relationship there. That's great. Okay, let's keep going here. So, another theme I'm seeing coming up in the questions is our exceptional expedition leaders, as we even have one here on camera right now. So, what do you do to find what do you do to find and keep good leaders for the company leading our amazing trips around the world?
Well, yes, funny. It used to be, it was Friends of Friends. That's our first expedition leader was Steve Morello. He was introduced to me by the International Fund for Animal Welfare when we were doing the baby harp seal trips. And I think one of the staff there was on a boat out of Provincetown whale watching, and Steve was a great naturalist, but he told a load of jokes on the microphone there on one of those boats, and I think they liked them. They're like, yeah, come up and see some seals and be the naturalist. And so Steve was our first naturalist leader, and we added some of his friends from the Audubon camp and so on. And that was the old days of finding expedition leaders. It was, I have to say, I mean, it was great, and that was so many years ago, and it was how the world worked. It didn't really lead us towards the diversity we needed. There were very few female expedition leaders back then. And that changed when Annie joined up 25 years ago. And we actually, and back then it was all male North America expedition leaders. And then Annie came on, and I believe now we have more female North America expedition leaders than we do male. But we want to do that around the world, by the way. We really don't want conservation travel to be impactful only for half of the population. We want to be able to positively impact everybody. So when it used to be friends of friends and recommendations and whatnot, now we spend a lot of time interviewing. We have a whole process. We have a whole field team. Annie actually starts those interviews. She's the head of the interviewing of that, still 25 years later. And then we do a lot of training. Where we didn't used to do that, we had a guide's guide that was 27 points on a piece of paper, which was a list of all the mistakes that Steve and I made in the early years. That was our guide's guide. And we'd hand it to him and say, here's what Steve and I did wrong. Don't do that. Well, now we have full, 3, 4, 5-day trainings all over the world. I believe we have one going on right now in Brazil, right at the moment. So we have all over the world. We have them. We had them in a couple weeks ago here in Boulder. So we find great leaders, and we also do a lot of training, and we have a lot of support for them with technology in the background to help them in different situations. We also have hotlines to call if there are, emergency situations. It's become with hundreds, and I think we have 350 expedition leaders around the world. And that's not even to mention the field staff above them, the drivers and so on. So it's become a big machine that takes a lot of continual training. And I will say this, the most inspiring times for me is when I get to spend a few days with the field team and watch these folks and, do their thing. And that to me is always inspiring.
Yes, absolutely. I know that I've been on some trips. I've met several of our guides. I've worked with them every day, and they are just some of the incredible people. And then also in the office, the leadership team is also amazing. So we've done a great job harnessing all these phenomenal people to help be the face and run this amazing company. So I can't believe we are almost to the end. This has flown by. I've enjoyed listening to both of you. But Court and Ben, I would love to turn it to you for any last closing comments.
Well, I'll let Ben get the last word, so I'll start off and really just say thank you. Thank you to Ben for joining. Obviously, thank you for the incredible company you've built and the opportunities you've created for literally hundreds of people from a staff perspective, and then thousands and tens of thousands from a traveler perspective, and then maybe hundreds of thousands, if not millions, from a community perspective around the world. So it's an incredible thing. So obviously, first and foremost, thanks for being here today. Thanks for putting up with my questions, but thanks for all that you've done over 40 amazing years.
Well, thanks, Court. I will turn that around, and I will thank you. I will thank all of our expedition leaders, our field staff, our office staff, and our guests. I mean, I think about if it isn't for all of you folks, I would just be another failed teacher. And I think about, what I've been able to do is all on the backs of such wonderful folks that I get to see every day and be inspired by. And that includes our guests who are just incredible people who choose to spend their time and their money to go to these places. If it wasn't for you folks listening today, you and I know, Court, we wouldn't have jobs, or maybe we'd be out there looking for birds or whatnot. But thank you all so much. I can't thank you enough for a wonderful 40 years. I'll see you in 40 more for our 80th reunion.
Wonderful. Well, personally, I would like to thank you, Ben, and I would also like to thank you, Court, for hosting such a wonderful webinar today. And I would like to thank everybody who tuned in. Join us tomorrow for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, Brooke.